Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Scott Turner, head of the Housing and Urban Development, ends up torching this ridiculous Democrat when she goes completely off the rails. Let's dive in.
I am sure you're aware that you are worsening the housing crisis with your budget proposal. If you really believe that you would not slash your agency's budget by over 50%. And by the way, you talk about giving the authority back to the states. You want to give them authority, but you don't want to give them resources. You can't do anything with your rhetoric and your narrative. You got to show with your actions and with your resources. And last but not least, I want you to tell me what DEI contracts you have terminated. What does that mean? Did you terminate contracts to veterans? Did you terminate contracts to disability organizations? Did you terminate contracts to Black contractors? Did you terminate to Latino or Asian or whatever? What the heck are you talking about eliminating DEI contracts in HUD? Who's your population? Who should you be looking after? It is shameful, and you are to be ashamed of being here. You don't have to answer any question because you haven't answered one yet.
Ms. Vice Chairman, I would actually like to answer her.
I yield back. I don't need you.
Okay, thank you, Congress Lady. And thank you for stating all the stats of our budget. We really appreciate that because it just reiterates my point that with record funding, HUD has still not carried out its most basic mission. And I have
Don't
answered
act like
questions.
you haven't been here, sir. Just 4 years ago, you were here.
Ms.
Don't
Watson,
act
Ms.
like
Watson
you
Coleman,
care
if
about
you'll let
this
him, Ms.
population.
Watson Coleman, if you'll let him answer the question,
I
your
don't
time
need.
has
I
expired.
listen. I reclaimed my time back. I yielded my time. You wouldn't let him waste your time. You let him.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you, Ms. Watson Coleman. Thank you for reiterating my point. That status quo is not good enough. I've traveled extensively in just 120 days that I've been in this assignment around our country and visited public housing authorities. I was just at NYCHA to address the congressman who was asking me about NYCHA. NYCHA is $200 million in arrears. And that's with a $2.3 billion appropriation from the appropriators, $2.3 billion in fiscal year 24, and yet they're $200 million in arrears. They have 250,000 people on the waiting list. Just while I was there last Wednesday, a 21-year-old was shot in the neck and killed at a public barbecue, and no arrest has been made. So tell me, how are the residents there safe? They're living in deplorable conditions. It's not safe. The New York NYPD is not responding the way they should. And so that's just one example of a public housing authority not being efficient, but yet we want to continue the status quo. I'm not interested in doing business as usual. The president is not interested. And so the answer is this is a new culture. It's a new paradigm. And another housing authority that I visit, the residents were even afraid to tell me what was going on in fear of repercussions by the board of directors there. There was one lady there that's been living there since 1973. That means she's been living there her entire life. Her mother, her, and now her children, multiple generations living in public housing authority. That's not what it's meant for. It's meant for temporary assistance, but then to be raised out of public assistance to a life of self-sustainability. And so, no, ma'am, public housing authorities as a whole are not operating efficiently.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem in a nutshell. Essentially, what we've seen since FDR and LBJ opened the floodgates basically to a welfare state and system, the Republican Party has been slowly trying to claw back the ridiculousness that ultimately comes of that bureaucracy and that sort of basically fake version of welfare. It does not help people the way it was intended to do. And it doesn't here in the United States. For some reason, it works over there in Europe. But that system, by the way, is starting to crumble before their very eyes. So that's a fun part to monitor. But what's not fun is the story that Scott Turner is telling. Basically, there are problems in housing and urban development, and there is a huge wait list trying to get into the homes. And then you have this Democrat coming along saying that, oh, by cutting funding, you're going to be cutting housing. Ma'am, if you were better at governing, you would not have to deal with the housing problem. It should be that simple, but I guess it's not, particularly to the Democrat Party. Hey, y'all, here's the deal. Gold loves President Trump. Under Trump's first term, the price of gold soared 53%, and the price of silver jumped 51%. Since the start of the second term, gold has skyrocketed even higher, breaking records and even outperforming stocks. Here's what I like about precious metals like gold and silver. They have been used as a store of value for centuries. Governments can't easily manipulate it. They are used as hedges against market risk and, of course, against inflation. That's why I partnered with the amazing people over at Goldco. Goldco is an award-winning precious metals company. They are fans of this show, and they have helped millions of Americans just like y'all to purchase over $3 billion in gold and silver. Right now, you can get a free copy of their 2025 gold and silver kit. On top of that, you might also qualify for their amazing unlimited silver bonus offer. So don't wait on this. Go to politibrawlgold.com to learn more. That's politibrawlgold.com or call 855-644-GOLD. Housing keeps on getting worse, and I love getting to use Atlanta as sort of an example. And when I say Atlanta, I'm talking also about outside the perimeter, outside of 285. As Atlanta has grown exponentially and just ballooned in size, what we've also seen is some of the nearby counties, DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Cobb County, all become more and more Democrat dominated. What they don't tell you about that is that usually means a huge problem with housing. And that's because the Democrats don't have a growth mindset. It's not really a part of their party lexicon. Pretty much the whole point of the Democrat Party is to try to take money from the rich and give it to poor people. Sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't take into account any economic incentive. It doesn't take anything into account, particularly when it comes to local areas. Cobb County is very hilly. It's tougher to build neighborhoods out there. Same with Gwinnett. You have to take into account the kind of landscape you're going into. And so when it comes to housing, they just kind of push everything outwards. And with housing and urban development, there are also other problems that Scott Turner is clearly trying to bring to light here, but this Democrat doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear this, folks, because they don't want to take a look inside of the mirror. They don't want to look at themselves and think, maybe we caused part of this problem. As a matter of fact, the whole reason that we keep on trying to just dismantle the welfare state is it doesn't work. The whole point of it is to get people back on their feet and not make them dependents. But it's also rife with corruption. All right, it's not just crime, it's now corruption. There's a huge story that came out in 2024 that kind of got swept under the rug, but when Scott Turner is talking about NYCHA, I believe this is what he's talking about. Though it seemed to be working for a time, the New York City Housing Authority took another major blow in 2024 after 70 employees were arrested on bribery charges in a shocking sweep by the Department of Investigation. Oh boy. Considered the largest single-day bribery takedown in history, the scheme involved $13 million in contracts and $2 million in bribes. Yikes. When we talk about Democrats can't govern, because that used to be, Republicans can't govern. That used to be a thing about 10 years ago. But the reality is, Democrats are rife with corruption. Because again, there is not a growth mindset. There's not a pro-economic mindset. It is about how much can I get from the state. Gone are the days of JFK asking what we can do for our country. It's now, what can our country do for you? Instead of building something together, building something stronger, building back better, there was an attempt to just take as much money as they can out of the system and put it into their own pockets. This is absolutely insane. And then you have the gall of this Democrat out here screaming, ranting, and raving. And by the way, there's some undertones of a race card being played here because she's mad that Scott Turner isn't acting like a Democrat. Scott Turner is clearly a black man, and this congresswoman is a black woman. And fortunately, black men have been leaving the Democrat Party in droves because of this nonsense. They're tired of this. They've realized that the Democrats don't really have any good policies that benefit them, and they're also reminded constantly that there was, a little matter of fully funding HBCUs that Donald Trump did in his first term, and then there was something called economic opportunity zones that greatly benefited the black community. They're beginning to understand that Republican policies, and particularly MAGA and Donald Trump style policies, end up being a little bit better for their community, and they're starting to change their allegiance. And yeah, that's a good thing. This is the right kind of progress that I want to see. The dismantling of the welfare state does need to happen to some degree, and finding this kind of fraud, all right, these kinds of briberies, this kind of abuse of the system, yeah, no wonder the budget is going to be smaller, Karen, for lack of a better name here. She's whining, this Democrat is whining about something that she could be helping to mitigate, but instead she has let this problem fester. She does not want the accountability, and meanwhile Scott Turner is basically saying, here's the problem that we're dealing with, here's something that I just had to deal with, can you please work with me? Because if Congress doesn't work with the president, well, Congress just isn't going to work at all, now is it? This kind of bribery, these kinds of scandals, these kinds of problems have got to end. This is why we've had the Department of Government Efficiency. This is why we're cutting so much. We can no longer afford this free blank check to people who are quite literally gaming the system, and it turns out it's the people operating the system who are gaming it to begin with. That is what good progress looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Cleaning out a quite literal swamp. That's the challenge ahead. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Till then, y'all have a good one.